secret document that the FBI, under pressure, finally agreed to let them read.
If we had a responsible news media, they'd be all over this.
Have you seen anything that would lead you to believe that Biden is compromised when it comes to Ukraine or Russia or even China?
Yes.
We begin with the unprecedented situation of a former president under 2 criminal indictments while also running to win back the White House. Donald Trump now must fight both the Mar-a-Lago document charges and those related to Stormy Daniels. The special counsel moved aggressively against Trump in the classified documents matter, but the government is taking little action on classified documents found in Joe Biden's Delaware home and garage. Trump denounced what he called retribution for Republicans in his statement last night. Joining us now to discuss all this is former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, who's the host of Huckabee here on TBN. Governor, we thought we would have you on a slow news day. There's so much to talk about here, but Governor, you hear President Trump calling this warfare on him.
It is warfare on him, and I just think we need to stop and remember that not only is this unprecedented to go after a president for any crime, but this in particular makes no sense to anybody who would just look at it objectively. They're saying Donald Trump had classified documents. He's the president, he can declassify them. Joe Biden had classified documents when he was a senator and a vice president, and he had no authorization whatsoever to possess them and certainly not to declassify them. And worse, Donald Trump's were under lock and key at Mar-a-Lago with Secret Service guarding it 24 hours a day. Joe Biden's were in boxes sitting by his Corvette in his open garage, for heaven's sakes. This is absurd, and I just hope the American people are as angry as they ought to be that we now clearly have a 2-tier justice system, and one tier of it is intent on whatever it takes to destroy Donald Trump. And the sad part about this one, this is a person who is basically using the powers of government to deal with and destroy his political opponent, likely to be his rival in 2024.
Right. The timing of this is quite interesting. And as you brought up, there is also an investigation going into Joe Biden right now. He has a special counsel on him, Robert Hur. So it will be interesting to see the timing of when or if that will come out at all. How much pressure should be put on the DOJ right now to move that case along?
What the DOJ ought to do is, first of all, drop this nonsense against Donald Trump. They should just admit that there's not enough here. It's not worth what we're going through. And we do not want to weaponize the justice system for a political purpose, which is what they're doing. The second thing is, I doubt much of anything will come of any investigation against the Biden crime family. I just don't. This week, we have now the knowledge that the contents of that Form 1023 indicates with a very high level of authority, a human source saying that Joe Biden received $5 million personally in order to influence policy when he was vice president. Now, that's a serious deal. That's huge. We're not talking about his son's crack habit. We're talking about the sitting vice president and current president who got $5 million. And that ought to be stop the presses. Everything else has to just come to a halt until we get to the bottom of this to find out, is our president, in fact, on the take?
Well, the interesting thing is, Governor, if you look at it, these classified documents that were in Joe Biden's house, Hunter, his son, actually had access to those documents. Many of them show they were actually pertaining to Ukraine, which this form you referenced that the Oversight Committee has just looked at, this FD 1023, pertains to Burisma, to Ukraine. And so how concerning is it that we have a president who potentially is compromised on what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, potentially China, a sitting president?
If we had a responsible news media, they'd be all over this. Every reporter in Washington would be digging around to try to get to the bottom of it. But we don't have a responsible press. I hate to say it, but Donald Trump was right when he made that controversial statement saying the press is the enemy of the people. And when they will not tell the truth, they won't even look for the truth. Not that they found it but won't tell it. They won't even look for it. And that makes them truly the enemy of a democracy that depends upon light being shed on what our government is doing. If they're not willing to speak truth to power, then they have empowered those in power to crush the rest of us. Here's what I hope would happen. I wish every Republican candidate for presidency who was announced would suspend their campaign fly down to Miami on Tuesday and stand with Donald Trump and say, if this can happen to him, it will happen to us, and we demand that a stop is put to this insanity.
You know, the interesting thing is many people talk about how this is in the effort to make sure that Trump does not become the president once again. If he dropped this and said, I'm going to still fight these cases, I'm going to drop this, though, he says he wants to put America first. Do you think there's an argument to say, continue to fight this weaponization, but there's so much drama that comes with the former president now, so much baggage that comes with him? Is that good for the White House?
It would be a horrible thing for the President Trump to drop out of the race for the simple reason that if the Democrats are successful and these thugs in the Department of Justice are successful in causing Donald Trump to get out of the race and forego running for president because they've chased him like this, then what on earth would ever make us think that they're not going to do it to whoever is the nominee and whoever is the next Republican president? The sharks smell the blood in the water, and they're going to keep biting as long as there's food there. President Trump may be the only person who has the wherewithal to relentlessly fight back. I'm not sure anyone else has the personality or the perseverance to say, just keep it coming, but I will not leave the ring. I'm going to stand here, take the punches, but I'm going to deliver some punches back as well.
Well, he's already been through so much. You think about the last 7 years, it's quite incredible. What do you think the likelihood is that we have two candidates in 2024 who are both under investigation, both being indicted?
Well, it certainly isn't the most pleasant situation, but in one case, you have a president, the current one, Joe Biden, who has been protected by the media and by the wheels of justice for many years, as well as through his son. The other one, he can sneeze wrong, and they'll say he didn't use the right size Kleenex. So I think American voters will have an opportunity to say, what's going on here? How come they don't want Donald Trump back in office? Is it really because of his personality? No, it's because he does not belong to the donor class. He is not a part of the swamp. He's not a part of the deep state. And I think they know that if he gets back in, everything he tried to do before, and successfully in some cases, of dismantling the deep state, he will do it with a vengeance if he comes back. And frankly, nothing will save this republic more certainly than having somebody go in there with a vacuum cleaner and do some serious cleaning out of our federal government and the agencies that have sought to destroy what real democracy looks like.
Members of the House Oversight Committee have now had the chance to review a secret document that the FBI, under pressure, finally agreed to let them read. The document and its many redactions includes accusations that then Vice President Biden and his son Hunter received millions of dollars from foreign interest. Some committee members are now demanding that the general public be allowed to see the document for themselves. One of them is South Carolina's Nancy Mace, who's a member of the Oversight Committee. Congresswoman, welcome to the show. It's good to see you this evening. Okay, you have seen this document yourself now. What are your takeaways?
Well, my initial takeaway is this corroborates other information that we've seen elsewhere, including emails on Hunter Biden's laptop where he laments and complains he has to spend half of everything he earns, has to share it with his father. Well, this document corroborates that information. And I want to remind viewers, this document is several years old, came out, existed long before we knew anything about the laptop, but it corroborates that because the initial focus of this documentation shows that there was a bribery scheme where the Bidens received $10 million, split evenly 50-50 between Hunter Biden and Joe Biden at the time. And when you add all of this up and you look at other information from other investigations elsewhere, where there's smoke, there's fire. And this ought to be investigated to the fullest extent of the law.
Okay, I've heard you say that this is damning, but is it illegal?
Yes.
Is this impeachable?
Well, bribery is illegal. RICO, racketeering, money laundering, those are illegal activities, corruption. And one of the things that we saw in the 1023 document is that they were bragging about, the Ukrainian executives were bragging about the number of shell companies and how complex it was, that it would take a decade for the U.S. ever to find out what really went on. They hid the source of the funds, and they hid through these shell companies where the funds were going. And in fact, President Biden joked about it yesterday in a press conference. He thought the whole thing is laughable. This isn't funny. This is not a joke. Being bought off by countries around the world isn't funny. And it's not, I mean, I would say to your viewers, don't listen to me. I want the document made public so that the mainstream media and the public at large can come to their own conclusions after seeing the incredible information we saw yesterday.
Do you think that it would be too redacted for the public if it is made available?
It is heavily redacted, but even the information that was unredacted is very detailed. It does corroborate information found in text messages and emails on Hunter Biden's laptop. There are also recordings in separate investigations about the oligarchy paying off the Biden family. When you add all of it together in totality, it walks and smells and looks like corruption, RICO, racketeering, money laundering, bribery, and those things, when you're the president or vice president of the United States, ought to be fully investigated, and the American people ought to be able to come to their own conclusions no matter what.
So the FBI has said this is actually under investigation right now. One of the reasons that they didn't want to give you all this document, they said it's a part of an ongoing investigation. We have to protect this informant. So are you certain after seeing it that this is an investigation? Are they taking this seriously?
Well, we don't know what investigation it pertains to. Now, remember, the FBI originally wouldn't confirm or deny the existence of the document, and then it magically appeared out of thin air. Then they said we couldn't see it, and then they said only the chairman could see it, but it had to be redacted. And then over the veil of contempt, the threat of contempt, they finally allowed members of the House Oversight Committee to see it yesterday, but it was even more redacted than it was on Monday. And so what you're seeing here is real, live and in-person stonewalling by the federal government, by the FBI to the American people, and that's wrong.
Have you seen anything that would lead you to believe that Biden is compromised when it comes to Ukraine or Russia or even China?
Yes. With regards to this document, it laid out a bribery scheme that would involve the president or then vice president of the United States. And that's what has to be investigated. We now, and I'm encouraging the Oversight Committee to subpoena more bank records. I want to go back to the Treasury personally and re-review the SARS reports, the suspicious activity reports, and try to look at how we can follow the money. It's a very complex web of shell companies and bank records. It was done that way purposely to hide the source of the Biden family income. But when you look at the revenue that Joe Biden made during his vice presidency and then post vice presidency, how he cashed in on his name through these bribery schemes. If it's not illegal, it should be and needs to be investigated by the FBI, by the DOJ to the fullest extent of the law. It's wrong.
So this has gone on for quite some time, over 6 years. So what is the timeline here? Because people, as you mentioned, are looking for answers, and this seems like it's being stonewalled or at least put on the slow track.
Right. And it has been by the FBI because they have dragged their feet for as long as possible. And then you saw yesterday, the day that we got access to this one document, they indicted Donald Trump yesterday evening. And so, you're seeing this weaponization of the DOJ, weaponization of the FBI to take out the number one political opponent of the president of the United States. And, when I look at this thing and I call the balls and strikes, I've held members of the Republican Party in contempt when they didn't show up to Congress. I've used subpoena power before. And I don't care if you have an R or D by your name. If there's corruption involved, we're going to investigate it. If the FBI and DOJ won't do their job, we'll do it for them. And we'll even refer charges to the DOJ if that's what it takes. And if our investigation at the end of the day clears his name, I don't think it will. But if it were, then the American people ought to have those facts as well. But what I can say, what happened yesterday, the timing of the indictment, this is basically an attempt by the executive branch to cover up Joe Biden, the president's wrongdoing and corruption with Hunter Biden and his family, because that yesterday was the same day that we got access to the 1023 form from the FBI. Joe Biden has weaponized the executive branch to take out his political enemies. That's what's going on here. So when you talk to average everyday Americans, they're more focused and more concerned about the weaponization of the presidency of the United States. They think this is the stuff of banana republics, and that's what people are reeling about today.